Welcome to Audio Portraits.
Thank you for having me.
You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Arlo Maverick. I'm a hip hop MC from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. In addition to that, filmmaker, mentor, grant writer, all of the above.
Filmmaker, grant maker, or grant writer?
Yeah.
It's nice. So, how did you get into doing music?
Wow. My cousin Donovan is the one that pretty much got me into it. Like, my family's always been big on music, whether it be just records playing around the house. But my cousin Donovan is the one that kind of introduced me to hip hop, and that's like became what made me want to get into music. That and Michael Jackson, you know?
Introduced you how? Like, was he, rapping around the house or, showing you music videos? Like, how did you actually get into it?
He brought home some cassette tapes. This is how old that is. And it was like the early beginnings of us being like introduced to hip hop, and like we're hearing this stuff, and like he's like showing us moves. He's like just like letting us play it, and it's just like this thing that was just like so captivating. So that in itself, I have two other cousins that I grew up with, and we would just like do dance routines. We would like just imitate some of these artists on the cassettes that we heard, and that is essentially the beginning, you know?
Mm-hmm. I noticed that you got a YEG hat. It really represents Edmonton, eh?
Got to.
It's a little good segue that I wanted to use is that it's like, I know a lot of people that, come up in their city doing whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
Could be, for you, obviously music. Why haven't you ever left Edmonton to go somewhere more sustainable for your art?
Well, it's funny because when I was younger, the goal was to get to an age where I could get out of Edmonton. But one thing that I began to realize is that everybody who had built something would leave. And when they left, the city would always have to start all over again. So I wanted to be part of the people that actually stayed here and built something, because the internet has made it so that we can be all over the world without leaving from where we are, right? Mm-hmm. And I still travel, I still connect with other artists in other markets and everything like that. But the biggest thing is to build here what was not here, because Atlanta wasn't always Atlanta. Toronto wasn't always Toronto. LA wasn't always LA. It took people staying there and people coming there and bringing rich ideas, bringing innovation, creativity, so on and so forth, and people taking pride in what they have in their own backyards. Because if you think about it, like, and you may or may not be aware of this, but there's been a lot of people from Edmonton, especially in hip hop, who have gone on to do amazing things for the country and even the world. But they left and brought their talents elsewhere. But imagine if they would have stayed here and would have said, hey, I'm going to actively and intentionally make this into a hotspot, you know?
I think that's like one of the biggest things. It's like a lot of these people, they say that they're gonna go abroad to do their thing, but they still represent the city.
Yeah.
But that's never the case. They leave and then they forget about Calgary, they forget about Edmonton or wherever they come from.
Yeah.
Do you know why people, are like that?
I think it could be one of two things, right? It could be the whole fact that some people like resent the city. They feel that they are too big or too important or better than the city. And the thing that is interesting is that if we as artists are able to uplift our cities, like you look at someone like Kendrick, like what he's done for Compton. You look at what Drake has done for Toronto. You look at what Stormzy has done for London. Like, there are people who are able to take that and be like, hey, I'm gonna wave this flag. And I think that the trap that people get into is that once you get into a lot of these markets, being around that energy can sometimes make you feel like, I don't want people to know that I'm from Edmonton. I don't want people to know I'm from Calgary. So you know what, I'm just gonna blend in, you know? But I think that if you are fortunate enough to get to a point where you're able to get into rooms that people from your community have never been allowed to get into, then it's also on you to go back and open doors. And I think that in doing so, you build a community around you that is willing to support you, because of the fact that you could have been like everyone else and just like been like, all right, cool, I'm gonna distance myself from the city I come from. So for me, the biggest thing is like, yeah, you gotta represent where you're from, you know?
So what are you doing to not only represent Edmonton, but to kind of put Edmonton on?
Oh man, what am I not doing?
Well, I have an idea, but other people might not.
No, and I don't mean that to sound boasty or anything like that. But the biggest thing is that, like, for me, like, everything about my brand is centered around building community, right? And it's not just building community in Edmonton, it's building a community in Alberta, building community in Canada. And for me, it's a matter of mentoring, like taking the knowledge that I've learned along the ways and going back to the community and being like, yo, do you know about grants? Do you know about showcases, so on and so forth? Taking artists on the road with me and giving them those experiences allow them to understand like, okay, cool, this is how I move, so on and so forth. Like holding workshops, like doing things that allow me to take my knowledge that I've had and give it back to the community and at no cost, And the biggest thing is that my whole thing is this, is that there are things we could charge for, but then there are things where we have to say, if we don't actually create this thing, then it won't exist, right? And when you're building a community, a lot of times you're looking at it from the standpoint of we have to create an ecosystem. And that ecosystem has to have certain things in place for it to actually be functional, right? But if you are making it to the point where you're pricing yourself out of the market, or you're making it so that your services that you're offering can't actually go back and help build and rise all tides, then you end up cutting off your own supply as well too. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's a matter of finding that balance where you're able to create community, but at the same time though, still make something and look at it from a long-term perspective. And I think sometimes we're very short-sighted in the sense of, okay, well, I don't want to work with this person, or I don't want to help this person because it's not going to benefit me in the way that I feel that it should. Mm-hmm. But you opening that door for that person might have a key that opens up a door that you don't have a key for.
Yeah. I think it's also like people are wanting that instant, not success, but that instant help, or that instant, I'm going to gain something from this experience.
Yeah.
And just like what you said, you have to look at it at the long term. Was that something that you've always known in the back of your head that you wanted to do? Like, were you always looking at the long term, or did you have a little more short-sighted view of things when you first started?
I think I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by mentors who always showed me the long game, mm-hmm. Kata Pinnock, Don Joyce, Kirby, countless people who have like saw that, okay, here's this guy who has a lot of potential, has a lot of talent, and he's hungry, right? But let me put him onto game in the sense of, these are what the next 5 to 10 steps are going to be. And this is why you should make those steps, right? So it allows me to look at it from the standpoint of, okay, cool, I'm coming up, but if I'm the only person in my market who has success, then I'm going to eventually reach a ceiling. Mm-hmm. And when I reach that ceiling, I'm not gonna have anybody there to support me, right? But if I'm actually working with other artists and giving them game, right? Because a lot of times people are just like, well, I don't want to let them know about this opportunity, because if I let them know about this opportunity, then it's going to take away from me. Mm-hmm. But only in hip hop does that happen, right? Because if you look at country, they could have a country music awards here in Alberta that is only Alberta-based artists, yet there's managers, producers, videographers, everything. Every step of the way in what supports and facilitates an artist's career can be in that room, and it could be a sellout and thousands of people and multiple awards given out. But when we look at it from hip hop, because of the fact that we don't want to help one another, and because of the fact that, and it's not to say I don't want to come off as negative, right? But we don't do enough of it, and because of that, we haven't built an ecosystem that allows us to have the Alberta Hip Hop Awards, right? We should be at the point where, whether it's Moraine, K-Riz, Sincere, Kuzi C, whomever it may be, we should be at the point where we have artists that are rivaling against what's coming out of Toronto right now, mm-hmm. but we don't have that.
See, so it's so weird to me. Like, the one thing that I've noticed in the industry is that because hip hop it has that like rivalry type feeling to it, that maybe that might be a reason of why people think that they shouldn't be helping each other. Mm-hmm. And when I look at Calgary, for example, people throw shows and put on shows for themselves or other artists, but you don't see the support that you would think would be there. Mm. And to me, like, I keep asking questions on why that is, and why don't people come out and support the shows?
Yeah.
At first I thought it was because of pricing, or maybe, whatever the reason might be. It's like, how do we get people to come and support to build this community that you say that is important in building something like that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's not just one answer for that, right? I think one of the biggest things, and and I'll use a group from Edmonton that's not hip hop, but still operates within the black music space, right? Mela Freak. They are a band that does like R&B, Afrobeat, so on and so forth, right? And these guys like work hard in the sense of promoting, but they also work hard in developing a product or a service, whatever you want to call it, that an audience could appreciate, right? And I think, and this is only one of the symptoms, right, is that we have to be willing to start treating this like as if this is the be all end all, right? Because it is in a lot of ways. Getting to the point where we could put on shows that people will talk about for years to come. Your live show is what makes or breaks you as an artist. You could have songs streaming, so on and so forth, but if you can't get people to actually come out and pay money for a hard ticket or merch, then you don't really have a fan base, right? So in order to get to that point, you have to create a product that extends beyond streaming or a download or whatever the case may be, right? Where they can come and experience it in real life. And if you are willing to put the work in to create that live show, things will begin to change, right? And I can't really speak towards Calgary because I haven't seen a lot of Calgary hip hop artists in a while. I've seen Sincere perform like probably 5 times in the last like 9 months, and every single time the show, she shuts it down, right? And when I see something like that, I'm just like, yo, cool. She gets it. Mela Freak gets it. K-Riz gets it. Moraine gets it, right? And I'm just naming a few names, right? But what I'm saying is that when people begin to see that more often than they see the artist who just goes up on stage and doesn't think about what they're doing and doesn't think about how do I create something that's engaging the audience, how do I create something that the audience is now saying that I would rather see that than go see Drake or whomever the case may be, right? That to me is part of the problem, right? Another thing is promotion, right? We have to promote like this is the last show on earth, right? A lot of times people think that putting up something on social media is enough, but you have to do media.
Put it on their story one time.
Yeah, man, and don't get me wrong, you still need to do that, right? But there's so many things fighting for people's attention. It's not just other musical artists, it's movies, it's gaming, it's podcasts, it's a restaurant, a hockey game, go Oilers go, you know? But there's so many things that are fighting for someone's attention to the point that you have to say to yourself, how do I create an experience that people will want to come back to this? And that's where us as artists have to be creative about what we're doing. We're not just creatives or artists when it comes to making music, we're also creatives and artists when it comes to creating an experience that people could actually sit down and experience and want to come back to, right? And also, like going out to support as well too, right? You may not be able to make it to every single show, but if you could be out there supporting other artists, like this is the thing that's so crazy is that think back to when the Source magazine was a thing. At the back of the Source magazine, you would see pictures of Kanye and Jay-Z or whomever at some event. We don't do that enough in the sense of like, yo, like if I'm at an event and all of a sudden I see whomever, right? The Kid T. I'm just like, yo, T, let's get a pic, right? We're posted up at this one event here and we tag it, we let people know we were at this event here, that people just like, yo, like there's a community of people that are supporting one another. We have to make what we do cool. A lot of times we speak ill of what's going on in our community as opposed to uplifting it. Because when we start to uplift it and when we start to speak positively about it, then other people are just like, yo, I want to be a part of that party. I want to be a part of that coolness, you know?
No, and I agree with everything that you're saying, and like the fact that you have to build a product, because like a lot of what I'm seeing is like I see a lot of these up and coming artists or even artists that are already established in what they're doing. They've put on a show, and I don't know per se how the show went, for example, but that's where it ended. They put on the one show, and then that was it. Never seen another show from them ever again. So I'm just like, how do you build that experience and that product for people? Not only people to keep coming to your show, but for you yourself to keep putting on these shows for people to want to come to. Because like you put on one show, let's say you get 5 people to come through, okay, cool. That's gonna kill your dreams and you're never gonna do another show again. And I think that's what's happening. They're not getting, either they're not getting the money from it, or they're not getting the response from people showing up and then stopping it right there. So it's like, how do they continue to put these shows on so that they can, build something?
Well, I think that as artists, we are entrepreneurs, whether we want to admit to it or not, right? And as entrepreneurs, you have to take losses. But the thing about those losses is that you have to learn from those losses, right? And in learning from those losses, what ends up happening is that you go back and you're like, okay, so we had 5 people there. What can we take from those 5 people, right? A, did you go out and introduce yourself to all those 5 people? Did you go out there and talk with them and thank them for coming out to the show, right? Second thing is, did you ask them, what did you think of the show, right? Getting that feedback goes a long way, right? But then you have to also look at it in the sense of, okay, well, what things were we doing? What things did we do that worked and what things did we do that didn't work? Whether it be your live performance, whether it be your marketing, whether it be the time that the show started, so on and so forth. It's always a matter of looking at things and tweaking it and saying, okay, well, what could we have done differently, right? You're always analyzing because you're getting data. And with that data, and maybe the data says, okay, don't do this next time, right? Or possibly it's performing in the same market again and again. Maybe it's a situation of people aren't familiar with who you are, so then it's like, okay, you have your pregame. Your pregame is everything you're doing before that show starts, right? So are you going out and maybe it's hitting up a couple open mics, making sure you're appearing at other shows and reaching out to other artists and saying, hey, would love for you to come out to the show, right? A lot of times we don't assess the mistakes we may have made. We get mad at the audience and say, yo, they don't want to support, right? And another thing too we have to keep in mind, people don't support Beyonce, right? They appreciate and enjoy and take Beyonce in, right? But us as artists throw around the word support. I need your support, I need your support. I get that, but when we're able to create something that people don't feel obligated to listen to, obligated to come out to, things begin to change. And as artists, we have to change our thinking, right? A lot of times we want to get paid off of our talent or our skill, right?
Yeah.
When we, in my opinion, we should shift it and get paid off of our draw, right? Because if you're paid off your draw, it's like working on commission. Now you work a lot harder than getting paid that hourly wage. So when we start applying some of these principles in the sense of, okay, cool, I don't want to just get paid $1,000 a show. If I know that I could pull in 5,000 people and everyone's paying $15 a pop, why am I just walking away with $1,000? I want to get paid off my draw. I don't get the bar. If I don't get the bar, then I want to get paid off of the people who just came through that door because I brought them here. When we start thinking like that, things begin to shift because now we have skin in the game. We have something that's at stake. But at this point, me showing up, performing, going home, right?
I think the biggest issue is being a creative in any field. A lot of the times I feel like because we want to be paid for our, we don't put in enough effort into knowing different ways of creating income and creating things like that. So we just get stuck in our minds where it's like, okay, we want to put out a show or we want to put out a song, we want to get paid for this instantly. But it's like, just like how you were saying, to do different things, it kind of reminded me of doing an album rollout, for example.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how to do an album rollout and they all do it, but it's like, why can't we put that same tactic into putting that show on, like you just said?
Yeah.
Do a rollout for the show instead of just, putting it on your story a couple times and hoping people show up. It's like, just like what you said, go to some restaurants, go on the street, go wherever you gotta go and let it be known that this is what's happening and get people interested and wanting to go. Because like you were saying before, people might not know you. So it's like, if I don't know you, why am I obligated to come to your show? I want to come to the experience that you were talking about. Like, if I know this is going to be a great experience, I don't even care necessarily who you are or what songs that you sing. I want to be involved in that experience that you're building. So I do like that point that you made.
Yeah, no, and I think that one of the things that we don't have a lot of media out here, right? Over the last 15 years, we've seen media really take a hit, right? Because of online, right? But the media that is out here, reach out to them, right? Alberta has Kiave, Tariq from Dragonfly Empire, who plays an hour of Alberta-based artists every single week. Reach out to him, be like, hey, is it possible for us to do an interview? We have a show coming up. Campus Radio, CJSW, CJSR. These are outlets. CKXU. These are outlets. CKUA.
See,
that you
I can't speak for other people, but I just feel like people aren't doing that outreach. They're
Yeah.
hoping for things to just fall in their lap and to happen.
Nah, you gotta hustle, man. You gotta hustle, and you have to create opportunities for yourself and create opportunities for others, right? Because if you're waiting for those things to come to you, they're never gonna come, because there's a lot of people who are out there, and if someone is more present in someone else's headspace, then they're gonna get that opportunity. But if you make yourself the person who is constantly reminding somebody that I am out here, then those things are gonna happen, right? And the professionalism of how we approach things allows people to either mess with us or not mess with us, right? And so if you have a great show, you've promoted the event well, and people come through and you're engaging with them, so on and so forth. There's an artist from Edmonton by the name of Kripo, right? And this dude is a hustler, right? When he's done at the end of the show, he walks through the crowd, talks to people, brings them over to the merch table, sells stuff, but at the same time, though, he's talking with the audience at the same time and thanking them for coming out to the shows, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. And even finding ways to like give people the sneak peek into like your rehearsals or whatever the case may be. Like, the thing about it is that we have to understand as artists, and sometimes it's difficult. I am guilty of it myself, in the sense of like, I try to keep the social media away until it's ready, but people who don't do this are fascinated by what we do.
Yeah.
We may think it's boring,
Yeah.
but for them, seeing us like having discussions about like, okay, well, we're producing this beat, what chord progression should we use? What sample do we want to use? Whatever the case may be, like, they find that stuff interesting.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that that interest is them saying, hey, can I know more? Can I come into your world?
Yeah.
And if you shut them off, you just lost a possible fan.
And not only that, it's like out of sight, out of mind.
100%.
If you're not continually putting yourself out there, like, it only takes a day for people to forget.
Yeah, because there's so much stuff coming
There's
at them.
too much happening.
right?
So like, you got to keep yourself relevant at the end of the day, right?
100%.
Are you full-time artist?
No, I'm not a full-time artist. I still work at a day job.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That kind of threw me off. Of course. Not gonna lie.
No, I do. What's funny about it is that I think that because of the fact that music is all I do outside of like work, a lot of times people get the impression that I work full time as an artist, right? But I don't. I just don't sleep. But it's part of like, I'm trying to create opportunities for myself and create opportunities for the city, because I understand that whether I want to be it or not, and I'm happy to be it, I'm someone who people look towards for leadership, look towards for mentorship.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a situation of, okay, cool, everything I do has to be moving this thing forward, and not just moving Arlo Maverick forward, moving Edmonton hip hop forward, moving Alberta hip hop forward, you know?
Moving Alberta hip hop forward. I like that you said that. It's a segue to what I'm just about to ask.
Okay, ask away.
Talk to me about the Calgary versus Edmonton. I won't even call it beef because it's not beef, but
Yeah.
like, it's a rivalry for sure, and it exists.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it exists within hockey, but I don't think it exists within music.
You don't think so?
I don't think.
That's
if
not
it,
what I hear.
I don't, and maybe it's just, I'm always a person who's willing to extend my hand first and introduce myself and say, how can I help you, right? Where a lot of people will be standoffish and they're waiting for someone to come to them, right? So on my recent project, Blue Collar, we had a music video called Retail Therapy. And we shot it in Edmonton and in Calgary. Reached out to some Calgary cats, said, hey, we're shooting a video, come through, blah, blah, blah. Came through. My album, Blue Collar, also features Calgary-based hip-hop artists, right?
Okay.
One of my favorite video people to collaborate with is based out of Calgary, Vince Raquel. He's done, I think, like 3 music videos for me, right?
Okay.
So I'm always about like, yo, how do we make this happen? And those videos as well, too, were shot in Calgary. So for me, like, my way of thinking is like, we have 2 major cities in one province that are 2.5 hours away from each other. why are we not collaborating more?
Yeah.
Why are people from Calgary not coming down and doing shows here more often and saying, hey, let me hop on a bill? And we do see that. T. Fanny does it all the time. You know, Sincere does it all the time. K. Riz does it all the time, you know? But we have to make it the norm, right? Because if you're living in LA, you're driving out to Vegas
You're
on the
traveling
weekend.
everywhere and you're going to all these different cities to put yourself out there.
Right.
But like, I just don't see that shit happening.
I think we're going to see more of it. And the reason why I think we're going to see more of it is because the stigma that was there before is no longer there, right? K the Chosen. This dude literally drove down from our release party when we had it. And I was just like, dude, thank you. Then he drove back for an event that we had for Black History Month. I'm like, wow, like this dude like gets it, right? In the sense of like, yo, like be in those markets. Because when we make it to the point where everyone just sees this as a province as opposed to two separate cities, we are going to take things over.
Yeah.
But it takes us having the foresight and having the willingness to like make those efforts. Even Red Deer, we can't forget that this is what is so crazy about this province, and people don't understand the opportunities that are here. Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary, Lethbridge, Brooks. Those are markets where hip hop is thriving. And even if it's not thriving, it is being cultivated.
It exists.
It exists. Brooks has a huge Sudanese population. Most people don't even know that. Even,
I didn't know that.
Even Lacombe. Lacombe is like an hour away from Edmonton. And they have the closest thing in possibly Western Canada and possibly Canada as a whole to an HBCU.
Okay.
Where they have step team, marching band, everything like that. Black students who are coming from the US, the Caribbean, and the UK to actually learn at that school.
No way.
We have that here. Edmonton as a city, and even Calgary as a city, have had black people living here for how long? So black music has always been here. We just don't understand that. And once we understand our history and know that we have in Edmonton, there have been black people in Edmonton since the beginning of the 1900s. When we understand that, then all of a sudden now we don't feel that, okay, well, that's not Edmonton. Black is not Edmonton. Black is not Alberta. Amber Valley, all these settlements. We've been here from the beginning of this province. So when we start taking ownership of that and start realizing that and saying, yo, like, I'm gonna own this, I'm gonna participate in this, and we start bringing our own flavors to it, yes, we've had an influx of people from the continent. We've had an influx of people from the Caribbean, like in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and the 90s. But we should never look at that and say that we are other. We should look at it and say, like, we've been here from the beginning.
This is us. It's been
This
us.
is us, you know? So, yeah, and sorry, going back to what you're saying, when we start doing that, then now it's just like, we won't be afraid to holler, yo, I'm from Calgary, I'm from Alberta. Right?
Yeah. Needs to be a collective.
Needs to be a collective thing, right?
No,
But we all have to take pride in it. If I take pride in it, you take pride in it, everyone else takes pride in it, things begin to change.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
But we also have to add our own flavor to it as well, too. Because then when you add your own flavor to it, you begin to own it. Like, Drake has done so much for Toronto. Cardi, Mishi, Maestro, Chaclair, Socrates, all of them did huge things. But Drake made people from Toronto feel proud to be from Toronto.
That's a fact.
Before, it was like, yo, like Cardi's doing his thing, but like, yo, like, they still don't accept us. Maestro's doing his thing, but they still don't accept us. So people distance themselves from Toronto. Drake comes through and all of a sudden people are just like, yo, I'm from Toronto. You can't tell nobody from Toronto that Toronto's not the best city in the world now.
Yeah. They'll die before they let somebody say something like that.
Right? So imagine if we were to do that here, where it's just like, yo, like, Alberta is the shit. We don't care about any other province. We are the shit. When that begins to happen, everything changes. But if you're always doing something with one foot in, one foot out, you can't lift it up.
And nothing will change from there.
100%.
I heard you mention Blue Collar earlier. Why don't you tell us about your album there?
Blue Collar is an album that was produced by Aristoteles Kanga, Uzila, Kaz Mega, Enoch, and Cameron Brown. That was the team that I actually pulled together for it, along with Jinting. And it's an album that basically just looks at the blue collar working class people. I work within the oil industry, and so for me, like, there's no one is really speaking about those.
Like that crossover?
No,
Or
no one's speaking about the experience of what that's like,
Okay.
right? Hip hop has always had elements of escapism, right? But when hip hop roots itself in the struggles of the everyday people, sometimes the most beautiful work is created, right? You look at The Pimp a Butterfly, you look at any of Tupac's albums, you look at College Dropout, things of that nature spoke about what the everyday person goes through, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to create something that was going to speak towards that, because we're in a province where people are working all the time. But what does that look like in totality? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we looked at everything from the education system. Sometimes you're that person who is going through college or university. You come up with a degree, and you might not be able to get a job in the field that you wanted to get that you went to school for.
Yeah.
But you still have bills to pay. So then it's just like, okay, cool, I can't get this job, but I still gotta feed my family. So let me go work at this job in the trades
Same time.
at the same time and figure out how I eventually get back to that. And so the album is a conceptual album that looks at that, but it still has like some jams on there still, right?
So is this a big album for you?
100%. The things that this album has done for me as far as opening doors, it's been amazing. Whether it is nominations, whether it's making year-end lists, whether it's creating opportunities for me to be able to travel abroad, like, it's really done a lot, and we're only, like 9 months into the album being released. So I could only guess what's gonna happen next.
So what are some doors that's open for you based off of that?
As I mentioned, some award nominations. It's also allowed me to go overseas through showcases. I was recently just in Singapore for a music showcase called Music Matters, which I've been trying to get into the Asian market for a number of years. 2017, my debut album, Maybe Tomorrow, got me into South Korea, but this album here got me into Singapore, which is an English-speaking Asian country, you know? So going to Singapore, hella cool still, but the ability to have fluent conversations with people when they don't speak English is very tough, you know?
100%.
Where going to Singapore, with English being their primary language, it's a different.
Makes things a little easier, right?
100%, man. 100%.
So let's talk about that. I feel like a lot of people know that touring is huge as an artist, but maybe they don't know how to go about it. Tell us a little bit of your touring experience and what you would tell someone else about that.
Okay, so courtesy of this thing called music, I've been able to go to Wales, England, Estonia, where else? The Netherlands, South Korea, all across Canada. And I think that if I were to give artists advice in regards to getting into those markets, there's a lot of cool showcases that you could apply for, and there's organizations like Alberta Music where you could find out more about those showcases. But using those showcases, if you're able to get one, use that as an anchor to then get into other markets in neighboring cities, right, or neighboring countries. One of the biggest ones in the world as far as like urban music goes is one called New School Rules, which is based out of the Netherlands, right? And just with that, it's based in Rotterdam, but you have Amsterdam, you have Groningen, you have all these cities that love hip hop or love black music, period, that you could actually get into those markets and be like, okay, cool, let me figure out who's working in those markets, whether it be connecting with different promoters, whether it's connecting with other artists, whether it's connecting with DJs or whatever the case may be, like doing your work in the sense of like saying, okay, I've been able to get into this market, I've been able to get this showcase, who might be surrounding this orbit that New School Rules, for example, might have, right? Who are the people that are engaging with their comments? Let me go and look them up on Instagram to see like, yo, this person might be a producer, this person might be this, might be that, right? Being smart and being creative about how you find out who's doing what and getting into those markets. 2017, I was fortunate to go and play a third-party showcase in Midem, courtesy of my boy Dio. And that opportunity opened, like, the conferences provide so much knowledge, it's crazy. But being out there, I ended up meeting this one woman by the name of Claire, and she put me onto a woman by the name of Alana, and all of a sudden now we're in London. And we built a bit of a following in London just through that one showcase how many years ago, right?
Yeah.
So biggest thing is that even if you get into these markets, you still have to like be that person who's going to extend the hand first and be like, hi, I'm Arlo Maverick from Canada, hip hop artist. What do you do, right? Because you never know what it can lead to.
Word. Honestly, I wish we could sit here and talk more. We usually have more time to talk about things, but I know you got a rehearsal here shortly.
Yes.
You got a rehearsal, so I want to give you some time for that. I do want to ask one more question before we head out, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because so many people are going into creative lanes in their lives, what's one thing that you would tell a younger artist? What's one thing that you would tell a younger artist? A piece of advice.
A piece of advice. Get yourself a mentor and nurture that relationship. Again, I was fortunate to, like, my boy Fabian introduced me to his cousin, Kata, and Kata, like, provided me with so many gems on how to navigate this music industry. He's the first person I ever heard of grants from. And that allowed me to better understand that side, and I've been able to share that information with more people, right? But getting a mentor, someone who's going to give you those gems and be able to answer those questions, and also challenge you to really reach your potential. I think that's something that we need to have more of, especially as it relates to hip hop. Like, we as OGs, or even just people who are older than the younger artists who are coming up, like, we have to let our guards down and be more involved, and strip away the ego. Like, the younger artist doesn't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And for them, this genre is very much about, you have to be delusional within hip hop to be a Drake, to be a Jay-Z. Those are two artists that people said would never become what they became.
Yeah.
So you have to have a level of delusion, right? But as the OG who's looking at that artist, separate that, have those conversations that allow them to realize that, like, okay, cool, someone's looking out for me. And I don't have to always be this thing. When I'm on stage, if I'm on the mic, cool, I need to be that. But when it comes to interacting with my fans, when it comes to interacting with other people, interacting with other artists, that humility goes a long way. Because that humility will allow you to open up a conversation that ends up changing your life. And I think that it's on us as OGs to actually bring the younger ones around us, teach them what they don't know that they need to know, and give them advice when they don't even know they need to know certain things. Because if we don't, it's on us. If we tell them and they do what they weren't supposed to do, that's on them, but we shouldn't write them off just because they made a mistake. We have to understand that we were once at that age where we didn't know what we were doing, and we assumed that we were navigating in the right way, and it may not have been the right way. But some of us were fortunate to have people who came around and said, yo, you don't want to do that. Some of us weren't. Let's be the ones who actually navigate them the right way.
I love that. Well, appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
And if you didn't like that, better luck next time.